And today we have a very special guest, Matt Raithel, the studio director over at Graphite Lab, a video game development studio. Say hi, Matt.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Welcome. Claps all
Thank you
around
very
if you're
much.
listening back at home or you're driving in your car. Take your hands off the wheel and clap for Matt. He is, I mentioned the studio director. They're hard at work on a new game coming out. It's called Hive Jump. It's an epic kind of sci-fi action platform shooter, procedurally generated. Honestly, a lot happening with this game. It's like co-op, upgradable weapons. Zach and I, being Nintendo fans, we're kind of approaching it as like a potential new Metroid coming to the Wii U.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have kind of had that kind of observance of it. It's it's a sci-fi game, so you have like kind of like Contra being in there.
All those power-ups.
Yeah. And it looks like a lot of cool inspirations. Like it's the culmination of a lot of cool games all in one. And you can pre-order it easily through their website, hivejump.com. And Matt, I'm sure later in the interview portion you have a long maybe spiel you could give about the awesome things about the game. Is there anything you want to add real quick off the bat before we get farther in the podcast of maybe what people should know about you, if they or maybe if they've heard of you through other things, or if anything you want to share right off the bat about Hive Jump?
Well, first, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to be here, and I'm always thrilled to talk about Hive Jump and the other stuff that we do at Graphite Lab. I got started in game development in 2004, but everything I've done up to this point has been all work for hire. We get hired by bigger companies, big brands, the Disneys, the Nickelodeons of the world, to make games for their brands. But Hive Jump is the first one that we've made for ourselves, that we've kind of hatched in our own, cocoons of game design. And so it's especially thrilling for me to be on the podcast to talk about Hive Jump, just because it really is, despite or at least my experience within the games industry, this is still really like my first original concept that we brought to market. So thanks for having me on the cast.
Yeah, it seems like with Hive Jump being kind of like you're saying, like your first big game, it seems like you went right out of the gate with some pretty like ambitious, like beautiful art and insane kind of gameplay elements, like stuff that you would see.
Yeah.
On like an E3 show floor or something where it's like this is like a pretty big new game, and it's just from your studio and stuff. And so I think first and foremost, here let me dig into my phone real quick. Let me look at these the questions that I had typed out for you, so I can look at some of those. I think we can just go ahead and start off with straight into Hive Jump.
Sure.
And I think the first thing that maybe you could share is just the typical question, that everyone wants to know, like when you're designing a game, when you're working on a piece of art, it's just kind of, especially for people maybe looking to pick up the game or pre-order the game.
Yeah.
What kind of games were culminated into Hive Jump? What were the inspirations? What was the background? It seems like there is like we mentioned the Metroid focus, but I think in every other video or interview we've seen discuss the game, like no one else seems like really mentioned Metroid. I think I saw it in one other interview. A lot of people bring up all these other kind of sci-fi games, some of them which I haven't heard of, and so what was kind of those inspirations behind the game? And first of all, once again, for those that maybe just tuned in for the interview portion, thanks again so much for being on, Matt.
Of course, yeah. No, I'm thrilled to chat about the game and excited to jump in. So for me, as it relates to Hive Jump, and we're a team of about 8 to 10 that are touching this game at any one time. So we all kind of have our own individual inspirations. But for me, I was raised as a Nintendo kid. I grew up on the NES. I had a Super Nintendo, had a Game Boy Advance, and then once I got into my career in game development, the Game Boy Advance is where I got my start. So I was grown and raised on games like Metroid and Contra, and other Nintendo classics that for me have been my inspirations for Hive Jump. But there have been a lot of other things that have influenced the game, and Hive Jump at its core is an action game. It's a side scroller, it's co-op, lots of weapons and firepower, and you're controlling space marines that have descended subterranean alien hives in a mission to bring this nuclear payload to the center of each hive to nuke the queen and kind of reclaim the planet for the human race. When you hear that story, I'm sure like thoughts of Contra and its kind of pseudo sci-fi kind of feel come to mind. And there's also a lot of like literary influences too. Some serious, some not so serious. So Starship Troopers, if you've seen that movie, it has a lot of that kind of irreverent feel to it. Our game is one that's not super serious. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be lighthearted. It's meant to be very approachable, easy to pick up and play, but also has a lot of difficulty to it. So I think a lot of that has just kind of come together from all those different inspirations and with all the different people that we have working on the game, and it really made something completely new. We were talking about this in the office maybe just as recently as yesterday, where it's hard for us to say exactly what Hive Jump is, because it is a lot of new features that have been introduced to this kind of action genre, which we're really proud of. So when people see the game, you're right, we do get a lot of Metroid and Contra, but we get other obscure references. Some of them we don't even know, right? Mm-hmm. So there's games that people have brought up and like, hey, have you ever played this old PC game? When I see Hive Jump, I think of this. And sometimes we're like, no, we've not played that, sorry. But thanks, I'm assuming you liked it. Oh yeah, it's great. So it's really cool to see it all like kind of come together and really birth something new. So that's exciting for us.
Yeah, I was also like, while you were talking there, I was just thinking like with the whole mention of like you're going into the Hive, like it seems like, and maybe you would appreciate this parallel, maybe you wouldn't, but it also reminds me of like Destiny, like a 2D side-scrolling Destiny game, like where you have, I think of like the moon level in the Destiny, right, where you go down, like you're infiltrating, and a lot of it is like you're upgrading your weapon, it's just mayhem and stuff, and then this is that, but like in a cool retro 2D style and stuff that I think a lot of people like to get behind and stuff, because people love Destiny and that kind of just that grind of just action. And
very much. Yeah, we didn't really like set out with a mission statement to make kind of a game that everybody would enjoy, but we've taken this to a lot of different conferences and conventions, and we'll see 40-year-old game dev veterans enjoy it, and we'll see young kids, 6-year-olds that can barely like see over the gamepad and really enjoy it and not want to leave. And so it's really turned out to be something that wasn't intentionally mass market, but it just seems to be people really respond to it well. So we're so happy about that.
Yeah, you had mentioned the Wii U gamepad there, and I wanted to ask maybe why you chose the Wii U as the console exclusive,
sure.
And maybe like what do you hope that the console, like that platform could do to enhance the gameplay experience? Like we had in our interview with the Typo Man designer Zinoko, he was stating that like the touchpad was like literally necessary to make the game happen, because you had to drag letters and click the keyboard and type and stuff that would be so tedious on a PlayStation or an Xbox. Are there like kind of, it can be like unique game mechanics, or like you had mentioned you're a Nintendo kid, maybe it's as simple as that you just wanted to partner with Nintendo, but to make the game kind of be enhanced and stuff with the Wii U experience that couldn't be found even on PC, for example?
Yeah, some of both. So certainly the inspirations and our experience on Nintendo platforms, made it an interest to go to that, to go to Wii U. But it kind of goes back to what I had mentioned earlier in the podcast, where the gamepad is something new. It's something that we can play around with that other consoles don't have. And there's a lot of different interface types options that we're exploring. We're interested in putting a mini map of the Hive's terrain on the gamepad while you're playing.
Really
other things that kind of that don't distract from the action, but allow you to do more things within the game. So as you're playing through the game, I mean, there's tons of stuff going on at all times. It's always energetic, and we felt it would be nice to have the gamepad there so that you could have that kind of display showing you things that you needed to see while still all this anarchy is going on the screen. So it was both our personal interest and kind of excitement about working on a platform where, everything that Nintendo stands for in terms of their, creative and character development was very appealing to us, as well as the hardware side, where, this game graphically is, we're not pushing a million polygons.
I think it looks gorgeous.
Here, right? So it's got,
I'm very impressed.
This kind of classic vibe. So for us, it was about, not about necessarily horsepower, but more about like what could change the gameplay, and the gamepad seemed like a really cool opportunity for us to flex our game designer muscles.
Oh yeah, they seem pretty flexed. I mean, the pixel art and stuff that we've seen in the game. Zach, you had like a kind of a note and stuff about like it being only possible in 2016. Like, did you want to touch on that at all? Like, just the design, like the visuals of the game.
Well, yeah. Well, we've talked about it before. I think about just how like sprite-based art compared to now some of like the new like 3D games and stuff, and just gathering textures maybe to use for a game. It seems like it's an art form that's maybe more difficult sometimes to accomplish and do it successfully than some of even the more graphically fidelic games, if that's a word. Fidelic.
Yeah.
It can be.
You know what I mean?
It's gonna be like one of those accolades trailer, like Hive Jump, like the most graphical fidelic game I've ever seen.
Well, I was actually thinking more along the lines of like mechanically, it's nice how like when you make a new game that's kind of this retro style, or this, trying to harken back to maybe the SNES kind of days, these retro style indie games and stuff. They're essentially like modern games, really, with a retro skin, or you can push and do some really crazy things that you wouldn't have been able to do back in 20, 30 years ago with games. Things we've discovered. So I was kind of wondering if there's anything like in Hive Jump, because it seems like some of the boss battles are like really refined, and like some of like the bosses in the backgrounds coming out. Like, is there something that was only, you think, able to be accomplished in Hive Jump in 2016 with a modern game doing this retro look?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that we're really proud of, and I come from an art background, so I'm a studio director now. I have to kind of manage studio and everything from spreadsheets to bank statements, but I come from an art background. I went to school for 3D art and modeling and things, and so that means my formal education was in doing things like 3D lighting and normal maps and other things. So in Hive Jump, one of the things that I'm super proud of, and it's taken a lot of time to do, was implement a tool called Sprite Lamp, which is also a Kickstarter funded concept, which allows us to assign normal maps to the pixels, so we can do dynamic per pixel shading to all of these sprites, so that when you're a space marine and you set off your flamethrower, you're going to see it light the background. You're going to see it cast shading and real-time shadow against the pixels.
That's really cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Like it's something that we implemented very early to really test it and see if it would work well. It did, and it's really time-consuming because it goes from making just our pixels to then having to make normal maps for all of them and make sure those all look good together. So it's definitely increased the scope quite a bit, but in the end, it's exactly what you mentioned, which is it's a 2016 upgrade that we couldn't have done on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, definitely.
So
and I had wished. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it looks so freaking cool that I just, even though I know it's our game and I'm biased, but I just kind of geek out over just firing the flamethrower in the dark caves and seeing it light everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, we were like watching some trailers like prior to the podcast and stuff, like just while we were waiting, just like had it pulled up on the big screen, and it's just like, I mean, it's just, we were even saying, I think, like, dang, like it looks cool, and I think, I mean, it's one of those things where you just wonder, like, I mean, you look at the NES and then you go to the SNES, and it was like such an improvement, but then arguably, like, there's like a huge step back with the N64, because even though like it went to 3D and the innovation there gameplay wise was insane, it looked so ugly compared to like the beautiful pixel art. And like even playing like Super Mario Maker, we noticed like the 3D New Super Mario Bros. U like has a lot of cool things and stuff. Like Super Mario World's where it's at, and like maybe that's the retro kids in us, but I think at the same time like it is just visually appealing to see like how they can get detail and art out of just like dots, basically, like out of the pixels. And to see something like Hive Jump, and to see these kind of other like modern pixel art games, like Fez, Shovel Knight, Many or like Axiom Verge, Zeo Drifter,
Sure.
like there are all these games that use these pixel art things, but just in ways that look so gorgeous. And in a lot of ways, like I think people, you see it in stuff on forums with like, here's a new indie game coming out, or like the PlayStation Plus game of the month or something is this new indie game, and people are like, oh, like I want something like, that's like 3D and epic and stuff. And it's like, I don't think people realize that like with these modern pixel games, the art design and just the gameplay design itself is sometimes even more extensive than a 3D game would be.
Yeah. And that I think that's another reason why we felt like Wii U is a good home for Hive Jump, was the audience we feel a kinship with. A lot of us, kind of grew up in Nintendo era and have an appreciation for this style of art. And it is an artistic preference, right? I mean, it is kind of, appealing to some and not to others. When we kind of launched a few of our initial trailers, we did get some kind of pushback on the pixel art style, but, this is the game that we want to make. We have very specific reasons and personal artistic interest in doing it this way. And so Nintendo fans have definitely backed us up on that and have been really excited to see it.
Yeah, I was going to ask, just to kind of close out that discussion, has there been any other development things when you mentioned just like the whole concept of designing these basically 3D maps in a 2D plane? Any other like maybe cool development stories to share before we move on to maybe some questions about Hive Jump's future? In the studio working on this game, I can only imagine some of the stuff that happens. We've had crazy stories just like with the whole process of editing and putting Koppai stuff out there, and I've done like video and art production. Zach does graphic design. Like there's just always so many like both good and bad stories of things going really awesome and going right, or things going terribly wrong. And feel free to focus on either or. But,
Sure. I think one of the interesting stories for Hive Jump is the fact that we were crowdfunded through Kickstarter, but we weren't successful on our first Kickstarter. So we're one of these, I don't know if there's a label for our type of thing, but like a re-kick or a reboot or something, a resurrection. But our first Kickstarter campaign, we went in about a week and a half and just weren't raising the dough we needed to, so we yanked it. We canceled the campaign. At the time it was kind of a depressing moment, but not like, it was like, oh man, that kind of sucks. Like, this is actually going to be a lot harder than we thought. But it didn't discourage us. So we ended up coming back about 5 months later with this completely redesigned art style, which is largely attributed to our lead sprite artist, Ben Sievers. Give him a shout out there. Really kind of pushed everything that we had in terms of the visual style up a notch or two. And we expanded the scope a little bit. And everybody, whether it was programming or design or art, or production, everybody kind of upped the ante 1 or 2 notches, and came back stronger to Kickstarter later that summer, and we were successful, and then we overfunded by maybe 20-30%. So
nice, that's always good.
So it was a very as far as unique stories to Hive Jump, that puts us in a very small subset of games that were crowdfunded, but even smaller subset that actually had to go at it twice. We've got some good friends at TikTok Games who did Adventures of Pip, which is also a Wii U title, and they had to do a re-kick also. So we kind of bonded with all these groups that have kind of gone through things twice, and it's allowed us to kind of encourage other Kickstarter campaigns that maybe haven't reached their goal, to not give up hope, and to kind of that whole follow your dreams type of moment. So I think that's one of the most unique things about Hive Jump as far as production goes, that has helped us kind of pay it forward to other teams that want to do what we've been doing.
Yeah, I was going to ask real briefly, you kind of, I think, maybe touched on it there, just with maybe the necessity for it, but why go with Kickstarter over maybe, and I'm not too familiar with this process, so part of my ignorance, but going and seeking out maybe a publisher, or going about it this way or that way, was Kickstarter, when you started Hive Jump and had the idea, was Kickstarter kind of your first go-to, let's do the funding there, or have you considered other like things to talking to publishers or?
We certainly had and have even after Kickstarter, have been approached by publishers to talk about kind of putting the game out under their label. One of the reasons I liked Kickstarter is it allowed us to just be us and the fans. I'd mentioned earlier in the cast that I've done a lot of game development prior to Hive Jump. All of it has been work for hire, and almost all of it has been direct relationship with the game publisher. And it's a pretty straightforward process. You have a spec, you have rules, you got to go deliver stuff, you hit milestones, you get paid, everybody's happy. What Kickstarter allowed us to do was to be more reactive to fans' interest, be more not have any gates in between us and the fans, being able to control everything from our marketing to our communications to even freestyling some of the game design elements when we needed to without any kind of interruption. So that's one of the benefits. One of the drawbacks is that publishers come with a bankroll, right? They help you get the game done by funding what is needed to get the thing across the finish line. And so in the absence of a publisher, we've self-funded Hive Jump outside of Kickstarter, of course, all the rest of the way. So one of the things that's pretty upfront about with our Kickstarter campaign was that the Graphite Lab team is going to have to come up with more than just what we raise on Kickstarter. Kickstarter is one component of this, and we're going to finish the rest. So that's what's caused a few of our production delays. The fans have been super supportive of that, and we've certainly not given up any step of the way. So happy to report that production is sailing along, and we're going to be well, I won't get into any release timing. We'll put a no comment.
Come on, Matt, just go ahead, share.
But
it's if it does help at all. I mean, the podcast does go live on Monday, so if there's a reason you're waiting for any information, if you just want to go ahead and share it now.
We are in a better spot than we've ever been, and I'm super excited to release some pretty big news over the next couple of weeks.
Oh, nice, awesome. Yeah, you got some. There's a pretty big gaming show coming up. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called E3, so. You may want to, around that time is a good time to share, but no, we're really excited to hear more details on that. I was going to ask, that kind of leads into our final questions here, of just like, what is the future of Hive Jump? I mean, obviously, like, release is the first thing in mind, and you want to get the game out there, get people playing it. We certainly want to be playing it. But I mean, beyond that, is there like a goal beyond like post launch? I mean. Are we going to be having Hive Jump NX, 2017, a launch title? You going to be trying to go to other maybe consoles, platforms, or experiment with that in any way, or maybe even just like focus maybe like on expansions to the game? Like,
sure,
you already have co-op right out of the gate, so thank you so much for the co-op aspect of it. That's really awesome. But
absolutely,
you had mentioned maybe like I think in an interview with Nintendo, like the concept of maybe like amiibo support or just all stuff like that. I mean, anything and everything. Like, what's after the launch of the game?
Yeah, so, no, it's a good question, and it is something that my mind's on. I'm trying to kind of keep the vision, the 6, the 9 month, the 18 month down the road type of plan. And there's, I guess, two things that I'll mention. We are, of course, focused on first release, making sure that's set and solid and that everybody loves what they're playing. But Hive Jump we've built with lore and concept and theming that extends beyond what our initial release will be. So we've imagined additional environments, additional weapons and utilities and different boss battles and lots of other things that might not be able to fit within this first release. So there's no shortage of inspiration or concept that could allow us to keep expanding this world. So that's very exciting and something that I'm constantly talking about to the team about, and they're like, "Shut up, Matt. We got to get the first one out first," which is good. I'm glad that they're focused on. So that's one thing. I mean, there's a lot more story to tell, and there's a lot more world here to build.
DLC coming.
DLC, the Hive backstory.
There you go.
Every procedurally generated insect and stuff has a backstory, like a little backlog. Like you can just read the little journal entries.
That's right. Yeah, our humble bugs were just minding their own business. We could do it from their perspective. They were just there, just consuming a planet, and then these human systems alliance jerks just came down.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. So you can make a whole sequel based off that, where it's just Hive Jump, but now you're the Hive, and you.
That's
procedurally generated mech suit people coming in and shooting you all, and it's just
that's right.
Darn it.
It ruins your Thursday, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So I guess that's the first part. The second thing is we are Hive Jump's going to have additional platform releases. We're coming out on PC as well, and so there's going to be a time to look at other platforms. We're focused on these initial two to kind of kick things off. But we would love to have this game in the hands of as many fans as possible. So some of that's going to be motivated by reactions to the game once it releases from the fan base. What type of technology and hardware is available when it comes time to look at reaching new fans. So plenty more story to tell. There's certainly more platforms out there, so we've got kind of a wide sandbox to play in there.
Yeah.
We haven't made anything, official. We haven't released any plans for, other platforms or anything like that at this time, though.
We won't feel betrayed if you go on PlayStation 4 or something like Shovel Knight did. What was really cool about that is unfortunately Nintendo doesn't do trophies in their games or any sort of achievements.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's in-game achievements for Hive Jump, because I bet on the PC there probably are some achievements or something you can get. I like that about PS4 games, that there's trophies to get.
Yeah,
so
it's really nice.
Yeah. Kind of. I mean, there's some benchmarks. There's some level metric type of dashboard reporting. It's not framed in a way that's similar to trophies or old XBLA achievements right now. But there are definitely grades and ranks and other things like that are cool. Integrated. So a player can load this game up. They can play through, do a run and get kind of a score and go through again and know if they're doing better or worse or set certain kind of benchmarks for themselves. So there's kind of a framework that presents itself with similar goals, but maybe just not in the same way as a list of 10 or 12 achievements to get. So at least not initially.
Yeah. Well, cool, yeah. I mean, I'm all about getting those high scores and the arcade games and stuff. Star Fox Zero has been really fun trying to beat your time. Or even with Super Mario Maker having the world records and stuff. We've been really big on that, and so.
For sure. Well, yeah, this is a game where we'll feel speedrunners and people that like doing pacifist runs and other things are really going to get a kick out of this one. This game is perfect for that type of.
It's a fun live streaming game.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And Koppai will be there to live stream it. Yeah, before we close out, any other exclusive information you want to share, feel free. I mean, as we close out, this kind of the parting message to
of course
the Koppai Nation, the little Koppaites out there, as we bring the podcast to a close.
I don't have any mics to drop or bombs to lay necessarily, but I'll say you do have to stay tuned. Our Twitter feed, our Facebook feed. We are going to be announcing some news soon-ish, couple of weeks type soon-ish.
Nice.
And I want everybody to kind of be prepped for that. You can find us on Twitter at Hive Jump. You can find us on Facebook /Hive Jump. Very easy to find and follow along. And we'll send those infos to you as well for show notes and whatnot. But yeah, I guess my biggest closing part and thought is thank you so much to the fans, your listeners, you guys, for having me on the cast. We are an independent studio. We have to, kind of it takes a lot of effort to get people to learn and know about cool things as you guys go through with sharing your podcast. So we appreciate that community and support from your cast. And thanks so much. And we'll keep you posted with news and things, and excited for excited for Hive Jump.
Yeah, we're excited too, and to get that more information stuff, like it's just gonna be awesome. And yeah, don't feel bad at all not for having the mic drops and stuff. We have
Believe
to try.
me, I love dropping mics. Like
yeah.
I'm having to like physically keep my mouth shut right now.
Yeah. Whenever you are ready to confirm though, Hive Jump NX, like you know where to go. You know where to go. Koppai Nation. But yeah, so thank you so much for the interview and.